Okay, so just for the sake of the recording, I'd like to welcome you all to the IMVO webinar for wholesalers, and I'm now going to hand over to Colin McNamee, our Operations Manager, to go through the outline of the first half of the presentation. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everybody. Thanks, Leonie, and thanks everyone for your attendance this afternoon. As Leonie said, I'm going to deal with the first half of the webinar, and then I'll hand over to Leonie to deal with some of the other issues we want to talk about. So, as Leonie said, we're now recording, and what I would say is if you have any questions that you want, please put them into the chat or put them into the Q&A function within the Zoom webinar functionality. And what we'll do is we'll keep all our questions till the very end, but as a question comes to you, if you want to just pop it into the Q&A, please do so. I'm going to talk a little bit about progress since the end of Use and Learn. Alert causes in wholesalers, so what we see with regard to alerts being caused at wholesalers, and also talk about the impact of alerts at end users that we know the source of the alert effectively is issues at wholesaler level. Just briefly talk about management alerts and NMVS alerts, which, as you know, is our alert management platform, and certainly we're more than happy to answer any questions on that both today and at a later date. Leonie will then cover Brexit and small market issues, a little bit of an update on the IMVS, talk about the ask of wholesalers in terms of what we in IMVO would hope that the assistance that we get from wholesalers and how that impacts on reducing alerts. And also then obviously Q&A, and we'll stop the recording before we enter the Q&A process. There are also a set of backup slides, and we will circulate this slide deck after the webinar, either this afternoon or in the morning. And those slides will contain the backup slides glossary, just some more information on level 1 to 5 classification of alerts and exceptions, and also information on how you'd access our alert help using the operation code functionality. So a little bit of update on progress since Use and Learn ended. As you know, Use and Learn for all users of the IMVS ended on the 30th of May last, and pharmacy and hospital engagement with IMVO has really increased significantly. Our scanning rate has increased. It was at about 1.5 million scans per week during up to the end of May. It's now averaging at about 1.7 million transactions per week. Our alert rate has reduced, end user alert rate. That's pharmacies, hospitals and wholesalers, but obviously predominantly alerts associated at community pharmacies and hospital pharmacies. It's at approximately 0.05% of total transactions. So at the moment, what that means is about 1 in every 2,000 scans that's taking place is actually generating alert. 0.05% end user alert rate has been our target for quite some time. It's great that we're consistently in that range of plus or minus 0.01 or 2% when it comes to end users at the moment. And now that we've hit that target, our intent is to work harder to get that alert rate even further down. Scan rates, like I said, you can see there a significant jump. We were averaging at about 1.5 million up to the end of May, and that has gone up now consistently in the region of 1.75 to 1.71 million scans. The dips that you see here largely reflect bank holiday weekends, so a full working day out of the week when the scan rate is assessed on a weekly basis. So just to talk briefly, how often did end users get alerts during September 2022? And when I say end users, again, I include wholesalers, community pharmacists and hospitals. And I suppose the good news is that 50% of end users got no alerts last month during September 2022. That goes up to, you can see there on the chart, up to the 90th percentile, where 90% of end users had 5 or fewer alerts during the month of September, which effectively is just over 1 a week. So the message coming out of that, and we've seen that over the course of the summer, particularly since Use and Learn ended, is that while alerts are being generated, they're not hugely significant in terms of the number or volume of alerts that are being generated, which means there is, we hope, the time and space available to actually deal with and manage those alerts. You see that on a chart. So of the about 2,000 400 end users that we have in our system. You can see just about 1,200 users got no alerts during September 2022. And that peters out. Where you see the big numbers on the right-hand side, what we're dealing there with is some form of an alert spike, usually associated with a significant procedural error or some form of an IT issue where, you know, single pharmacy or hospital or wholesaler entities are creating a single event alert spike. So to talk about alert causes in wholesalers, and really, you know, without getting into huge detail, because we do know obviously that with the exception of Article 23, the scanning that is being done is largely is voluntary, but it is of huge benefit to us, and we will talk about that later on today. So the different types of alerts that we do identify, batch not found probably being the most regular, where the batch hasn't yet been released by the MAH. It's been shipped under quarantine to you, and as such the data has not yet been uploaded to the IMVS, or the data was not uploaded to the IMVS by the MAH in error. What we would say to you, if those errors occur, or those alerts are being generated in your location, tell us, tell the MAH, because we do find MAHs are very responsive, and either that information coming from yourselves, if you have that ability to reach out, or to come to us, and we're very happy to facilitate comms directly to MAHs in order just to get that data uploaded and into the system. Pack serial number not found, sometimes a data upload error. It's relatively common. We find it at wholesaler level, does happen, and could also indicate some form of issue with a scanner or software. Pack already in requested state, so this is where we are seeing packs being effectively double decommissioned, largely to do with procedural error. Similarly, the status change could not be performed. So that means the pack is in the state that you're either trying to set it to, or you're trying to set it to another state, but it is no longer an active pack. And that's largely to do with procedural error. And I guess the most important thing there is to ensure that your operatives on the floor are actually equipped with the right set of skills and procedures in order to ensure that those type of alerts are avoided. And then the last couple, just expiry date mismatch or batch mismatch, scanner software issues or scanner issues, where we see scanners, if there is a problem with your scanner, there is always the potential that it could merge some of the data. So if the separators aren't actually being read properly by the scanner or the software, it just means that we see batch pack data being merged together, which obviously means the wrong data is being sent to the IMVS, which means there's automatically going to be a mismatch. But what I would say is, by and large, we don't see a huge amount of alerts being generated by wholesalers, and we do know that you're, you know, collectively very, very responsive in terms of dealing with those alerts when they do happen. Wholesaler generated alerts in pharmacies and hospitals. So there are a couple of things that we do know do generate alerts in pharmacy and hospitals that could be avoided with sort of different procedures or practices at wholesaler level. The aggregation service offered by wholesalers to hospitals, the most important thing, and we do see quite a significant amount of alerts raised where sometimes there can be a problem between the aggregation barcode must match the delivered packs. Sometimes deviations cause alerts in other locations who receive the physical pack. So the reality there is the list of packs that are associated with the aggregated barcode that's going to a hospital does not actually match the physical packs that have gone to that hospital. And as a result, the aggregation barcode has been fully decommissioned at goods inwards in the hospital. We do see within the same day or within a couple of days, packs actually physically turning up in another location, most regularly private hospitals or community pharmacies, and those packs then being decommissioned in the way that they should be by the recipient of the physical pack. The pack has already been decommissioned at a different location, which causes an alert. And obviously the other challenge with that is the end user. So at all times, we want our pharmacies to be in a position to, you know, obviously rule out a falsification, but then be in a position to self-help to the point that they can establish a root cause for that alert to get it back to saleable stock or get it back to supply. The challenge with these aggregation issues means that they can't self-help because they simply don't know what is the cause or where is the other location that this pack has been decommissioned, which means it has to come back through us to a wholesaler, back through us to an end user, to a pharmacy or a hospital. So it takes time, and those packs are going to be quarantined until such time as the issues can be resolved. Returns, obviously packs returned to a wholesaler in a decommissioned state must not be returned to saleable stock. Otherwise, they're causing alerts when they're scanned, and it leads to complex alert investigations. Same type of thing where we have to go back and forth a number of times between the end location, ourselves, and potentially a wholesaler. So it goes back to that message that packs that are returned to a wholesaler in a decommissioned state must not be returned back to saleable stock and must not re-enter the supply chain. Article 23, decommissioning. So we understand obviously that wholesalers do conduct Article 23 decommissioning, but you must ensure that the customer meets the Article 23 criteria and does not intend to scan packs themselves. Very rarely we see, a site that is an Article 23 site and does go and do their own scanning. What can happen is through some form of error or procedural error or incorrect criteria, hospitals and community pharmacies are designated as Article 23 locations in error, and as a result, the packs are being decommissioned by the wholesaler before they go to that hospital or community pharmacy. The hospital or community pharmacy don't know they've been treated as an Article 23 site incorrectly, and then they go and do their normal decommissioning, which generates alerts. And the challenge with them is that, particularly in community pharmacy settings, that one delivery that's been decommissioned for Article 23, that could sit in a shelf and generate alerts for days, weeks, and in some instances, months to come. So it's very important that we can identify that problem. We can inform the end user, the pharmacy, that this has happened, and we would ask wholesalers, if those errors do occur, please do update the pharmacy to tell them that this has actually happened. We know, and the information that's available to you, that the HSE also do maintain a list of HSE Article 23 locations. So do contact the HSE F&D project team if you've any doubt whether a HSE site is to be treated as an Article 23 location or not. So they're the alerts that are being generated. How do we manage them? So as you know, end users and MAHs initiate simultaneous investigation of alerts generated in the pharmacy, hospital, or wholesaler site. The MAHs are not required to investigate certain types of alerts. So the double decommission, those what we call A7, A24, and A68 alerts, so they're alerts associated with the pack has been decommissioned either twice in the same location or in two other locations. MAHs don't go and investigate them without us asking them to investigate them, because we know in all likelihood the MAH won't be able to identify the root cause, because it's most likely some form of an error at end user level. The end user should look for procedural errors, like I said, has the pack been decommissioned twice, and then document the error. And as soon as that is root cause identified, documented in NMBS alerts, that pack can be supplied so long as there's no other issue with it. Technical issues, scanner or software, where the alert relates to data mismatch and procedural error, it has been ruled out. So once those technical issues associated with scanners or software is fixed, that pack can be simply verified again, and if successful, the pack can be supplied. We know in parallel to this, the MAHs are looking for data issues, the likes of which that we discovered or we discussed earlier, and the likes of which that we know do impact at wholesaler level, where particularly if packs have been sent to you in quarantine or just the data hasn't been uploaded by the time it is being managed at wholesaler level. But we do know that they're looking for those alerts and are managing them simultaneously. How do you know what the issue is? If you're using the typical FMD software, you will get a link within the alert message that will give you a high-level summary of what's happened. It'll also give you a link to our alert help page in the IMVO website, which will assist you in identifying the root cause for the alert and provide guidance on how to fix it. Again, the priority is identify falsification and thereafter to get the pack back to saleable stock. We also monitor the IMVS for a large number of alerts or unusual patterns of alerts by product, by batch, or by end user location. And we will contact, and I've no doubt we have contacted some of you, if we see an issue. Very often, if there's an issue at a wholesaler level, we know it's probably to do with MAH data that hasn't been uploaded, and we'll get onto you and we'll get onto the MAH to get that resolved as quickly as we possibly can. And likewise, if we see, for example, what looks, a large amount of decommission at different location alerts in a pharmacy, when we look at them, we can assess probably that's to do with an Article 23 mismatch or miscategorization. And again, we can try and talk to the pharmacy, get them to talk to the wholesaler to see was there some form of procedural error or categorization mistake made. So the next steps, obviously what we do is we are required to step in if there's no feedback from the end user or MAH within 2 working days and ensure that the alert is investigated if not already done. If the end user or the MAH doesn't provide us with some form of assistance or information to enable the investigation to be completed, we are required to escalate that to the PSI or the HPRA as appropriate, in the HPRA in the case of wholesalers, PSI with regard to community pharmacists. So the extra steps for wholesalers. So alerts generated by wholesalers should be managed as part of your quality management system. In addition to using NMVS alerts to communicate the outcome of your alert investigation to all relevant parties, do follow any alert notification procedures in technical agreements that you may have with MAHs. You may be contacted by a pharmacy, hospital, or other party about a pack you supplied to them which generated an alert when scanned. The action to be taken varies depending on what type of alert is involved. If the alert is due to the fact the pack was already decommissioned, please do investigate if that alert has arisen because of an error on your part, the likes of which we've been discussing while the pack was in your possession. So did you decommission it as supplied or destroyed, for example, in error? For all other alerts, refer the person contacting you to INVO for further assistance. So if a pharmacist or a hospital contact you and you're not in a position to assist, just ask them alert.support@imvo.ie or to give us a call, and through our support desk, we will be in a position to try and assist them with that aspect of the alert investigation. It may involve us coming to you as well, but certainly there's no difficulty with it. If you can't assist, please do point them in our direction. The verification of packs of goods inwards, I mentioned it earlier, it's extremely helpful. We're aware that scanning of sample packs received by primary distributors of goods inwards is extremely helpful, because the reality is one scan and one alert, for example, associated with the lack of data, the data not being uploaded to the system, a sample pack on a pallet could prevent a couple of hundred alerts if those packs were to go further into the supply chain down to pharmacy or hospital level. So it's enormously helpful and does help us prevent a huge amount of alerts within the system. Just so that you're aware, the advice that we give to MAHs relating to that scanning is that they should check that the data has been uploaded correctly and on time by scanning 1 pack per batch before releasing batches to the supply chain, or they can ask you to do that. If you send packs to your primary wholesaler prior to batch release and data upload, please inform them that the data is not uploaded. So we've asked them to tell you that so that you know that the data isn't uploaded yet. And if they are receiving large numbers of alerts on batches that they haven't uploaded to the IMVS, ask us to check, is there a problem with the batch? Is it visible to us? Sometimes the data doesn't get to the IMVS from the EU hub and it does need to be re-uploaded. So that's just the advice that we have given to the MAHs, but obviously there's a very close relationship between yourselves and the MAH when it comes to the scanning of those packs before releasing the batches to the supply chain. Just to talk very briefly about NMVS alerts, and you'd be aware there's 2 different options of how to access NMVS alerts. The end users and MAHs have the option to create an account in NMBS Alerts free of charge. And what that does is it allows you to log in to see or manage all your own level 5 alerts and report any information that you have associated with them. We've in excess of 200 end users now with full NMBS Alerts accounts set up over the course of the last number of months. If you want to get set up with a full account, if you haven't already, alert.support@imvo.ie to register your account. When it comes to accessing it by an email link, so the next slide, I'll show you just the updated version of the email that you'll get if alerts are being generated at your location. When a level 5 alert is generated, it comes with an automatic link that you can just click on. So you don't need a full account. You can just click on that link. That will bring you in very specifically to the alert that the email refers to. That link is live for 7 days or until such time as somebody has changed some aspect of the data within the alert. Or if you've gone in and you've updated the alert, once you click save, that link won't let you back in. But certainly if you did need to revisit us, there's no difficulty asking for an updated link to that alert. So this is what the email looks like now. It comes, dear colleague. It will relate to the fact that it will give you the very specific unique alert identifier, normally starting with the letters IE, reflecting that the alerts are generated in the Irish market. But there are alerts that can be generated in other NMBSs. We would see typically a lot of alerts coming from our French, Maltese markets, but we do see a full range. We saw some actually associated with a wholesaler coming from 5 or 6 different markets in the last couple of days. But basically, that's your unique alert ID. If you need to talk to us about an alert, if you have a query about an alert, that's the alert ID. That's the piece of information to send to us so that we are all talking about the same thing. That you can see here, the messages, please investigate the alert and document your findings if you need assistance. So there is more assistance on our website. The thing we do ask is that wholesalers do investigate the alerts that are being generated at your location, and you do log into NMBS Alerts to document your findings. Like I said, you can do that by clicking on the click here link, or you can go to this link here for NMBS Alerts, which would bring you in if you have a full account to set you to visit all alerts and to manage all alerts. This is what the end user page looks like. 2 pieces of information, and I'll just go into one at a time. So you can see there the type of error, the message. So in this instance, it's an A7 alert, which means the pack has already been dispensed. So what that means is that pack has been scanned either a number of times at your location, or it's been decommissioned for supply at another location, and you have attempted to decommission it for supply as well at your location. And you can just see there the information, the date, time that the alert was generated, the type of information, the product name, product code, serial number. Very often, if you're looking at these, and if it was an A2 or an A3 alert where there's some form of issue associated with the data, the batch data or the pack data, you'll see the provided batch might not actually be. So that's the provided batches, the batch and the information that your scanner has picked up on. And sometimes you can see a mismatch between the provided batch and the stored batch. And that would actually tell you, without even having to go into any further great detail, that there's some issue. So the scanner has picked up the wrong thing. And we'd see that a lot with capitalized letters or some form of an additional character inserted between them. Just when it comes to actually updating as an end user, so as a wholesaler, what can you do? There's 4 boxes, 3 of which we would ask you to tick. You can tick the technical error if the problem has been associated with a scanner or software error, procedural error. So, for example, the pack has been decommissioned twice as a result of just user error on the floor. Pack returned will only ever be ticked if the MAH had actually asked the end user, and we'd see this in the main between MAHs and pharmacies or hospitals, if they'd asked you to return a pack or other. So simply put, if you don't know what the answer is, you don't know the reason or the root cause behind the investigation, then what you do is you tick the other box, and you come down here, you check. So for either technical, procedural, or other, if you've made some form of a change, you have investigated this, click on the investigated box. That will change the status up here from open to investigated, and you can put in some comments. So for example, if it was a procedural error, we are aware that we made a mistake. The pack was decommissioned on multiple occasions, which generated the A7 alert. Click save, that's it, it's done. That obviously gets shared then to the NMVO. We get to see that, but also we get to see if there are, we get to do our part of an investigation, or, and this is very important, and it's important for you to know, if we know more about the alert than you do, and this is probably not so much at a wholesaler level, but particularly when it comes to dealing with pharmacies or hospitals, where, for example, we know this alert has been generated because it's a exempt medicinal product ULM, and they didn't need to scan it. Therefore, we can actually go in, we can say, we are aware that you closed this, or that you scanned this, it is a ULM, and we'll close the alert, which means very often by the time you go in and click on the link to see your alert, ourselves, or the MAH for that matter, could have closed that alert. And as a result, there's nothing for the end user to do. And that gives us the ability to push those messages down to the end user level and take away the requirement for them to have to actually conduct any form of investigation or analysis. Likewise, the MAH can also be in a position to provide you with that information with regard to updating. So for example, if they see alerts generated at wholesaler level, they get in and they see actually these alerts have been caused because we didn't upload the data to the system. Very often by the time you go in, you will see they will have closed those alerts. They'll have added a comment to say, this information, or the data hasn't been uploaded, and now we've uploaded it, or it's in our system to be uploaded straight away. So again, that's a means for the MAH communication. So it's communication from MAH through Invo to end user and back, and it does work in a very good way. My final message with regard to NMVS alerts is it is a very simple system to use. It's a very efficient way of identifying a root cause and recording a root cause, so that if there's any form of review on decisions made to supply packs, it does also provide a record for the rationale around the decision to supply those packs. So I'm going to thank you very much for your attention, and I'm going to hand you over now to Leonie, who will talk to you about a number of other issues.
Thank you, Colin. Okay, so very briefly, I'm just going to talk on the next couple of slides about Brexit and small market issues, because I think as wholesalers involved in the supply chain, you're very aware of some of the issues that arise. And you'll obviously be aware that at the small market, we have proportionately more medicine shortages and sourcing of packs from other markets. And I suppose from an F&D perspective, this has a significant impact we're finding. We tend to see more intermarket transactions with these packs because the data is not in the Irish system. They effectively, what happens is they don't find the pack in the system, then they have to, a message has to be sent by your software to the European hub, or by our system to the European hub. They go looking to see is it in any other national system, and then the transaction takes place in that system. So there's more steps along the way, and we know that if any part of the system isn't working, then that can have problems. So for example, there was an Arvato downtime for 6 or 7 hours back in May, and we know that caused a lot of problems with intermarket transactions against, for example, the UK market. So UK only packs weren't scanning that day for that reason. We also know that the HPRA, like many other NCAs in this situation, are national competent authorities. They tend to be flexible to ensure continuity of supply. So for example, we have the exempt medicinal products scheme, and you'll be aware of this, that you have to notify any EMPs or exempt medicinal products, or sometimes we call them unlicensed medicines or ULMs, which tends to be the term that pharmacies call them. Obviously, these are brought into Ireland. They may or may not have data in the market for which they're coming from. They can have 2D barcodes on them. So for example, we saw the early Pfizer and Moderna COVID vaccines were sourced outside the EU and had 2D barcodes on them. So it was easy to mistake those as FMD vaccines, scan them. We've seen a problem recently with a particular HRT product that was brought into Ireland to address a big shortage that we had over the summer in that area. And all the packs came in already marked as exported. So they'd already been decommissioned as exported because they had originally gone from France outside the EU and then came back in as exempt medicinal products here. So they're all scanning as already decommissioned as exported in pharmacies, causing a lot of alerts. Batch-specific requests is another thing that we've come across recently. And again, we had an example back in May where the Arvato outage identified that a lot of these batch-specific request packs, in this particular case, they were UK packs brought in by the MAH under a batch-specific request granted by the HPRA. And when the Arvato UK system was down, they started generating alerts. Now, we've done a lot of work on this over the last few months, and I think the MAH was particularly helpful helping us with this. And really what we've established now is, in an ideal world, what we'd like to see is if you bring, say, UK packs into Ireland on batch-specific requests, that you'd upload the data for those UK packs to the Irish system. But we've now established, working with the MAH and also talking to MOs, that's actually not possible. It's possible, but there's multiple layers involved, and it's strongly recommended it not be done. So what we suggested to the HPRA, the advice in that situation is that whoever brings them in with serial numbers, with barcodes on them, must make sure that the data is uploaded in the market from which the packs came from. So if they've come from the UK, to make sure the data is in the UK system and that they'll be decommissioned by intermarket transactions. For all the reasons we've outlined above, there's a higher risk of alerts with these packs, leading to noise and confusion for end users, particularly pharmacies and hospitals are handling these. We have given them advice on what to do with these packs, which is basically don't, for example, in the case of licensed medicines or EMPs, don't scan them. And if you do scan them in the spot alert, you can ignore it because they're effectively out of scope of FMD. But we know they are continuing to scan them because, you know, the multiple item prescriptions, a lot going on in the visit dispensary. There's a lot of telling them not to scan certain packs and scan other ones. It's very mixed messaging, so it is a challenge. Next slide, please. Okay, so Brexit is something we keep a very close eye on. And in fact, if anything, we would say Brexit now has probably become more challenging, because what we've noticed more and more now is the packs are coming in UK only packs coming into Ireland for which data hasn't been uploaded to the European Medicines Verification System, specifically the Northern Ireland repository, even though they're serialised. So the position in the UK now is, except in the case of Northern Ireland, packs intended for the main GB market, they can be serialised. So companies weren't required to remove serialisation post-Brexit. And one of the reasons being that a lot of NHS hospitals and other sites in the UK use this barcode information for their own internal systems. But there isn't an obligation to upload the data. So we end up with a situation with a serialised pack with no data, and that causes alerts when they come in here. Now, we do contact the MAHs concerned. We don't have a relationship with these MAHs because they're MAHs in the UK, but we work with our colleagues in the Northern Ireland NMVO, and also NVO helps us get contacts. And we've had a lot of success getting this data uploaded, which deals with the problems, but it's just an extra layer of complexity that is added in with these packs. Okay, so just very briefly, some updates on IMVS. We just want to remind you that if at any time you want to check is the IMVS up and running, there is a link there available. It is available on our website at the moment on our help and FAQ page. Now we intend to put a pop-up soon on the front of our website that will give you, if there's any problems, it will appear there, so that we would say our website should be the first support call if you suspect that the IMVS is down. And we will also notify you of downtime during release deployments. And that brings me on nicely to the next slide, which is release 11 is going live on next Sunday night. It starts at 9 p.m. Irish time, and it'll take between 3 and 6 hours. So we tried to time that. We were very mindful of the fact that a lot of wholesalers work way beyond normal business hours, and many of them work late into the night. We tried to time it to minimize the inconvenience to wholesalers. The big wholesalers, we will let them know when the system is back up again. If you want to be included in notifications, if you feel that time frame is likely to be something you need to know when it's finished, please let us know, and we can add you into the communications loop for that. I think in our IT manager, Ita, I think there's been a number of notifications sent out like that already. So it's just to build that into your scanning that the system will be down. These big releases happen twice a year, so we try and minimize the system downtime. But when we have these big releases, we have to just take the system offline and upgrade it. Okay, so just, I suppose we want to include with is the ask of wholesalers, and just go through a few things. A couple of points, and this will tie in from some of what Colin has presented to you. It's really important to make sure that if you get returned packs already decommissioned, don't put them back into saleable stock. The problem with that, if that happens, we are still seeing a bit of it, is that we get alerts for the next customer who receives them. So the next pharmacy who scans that pack, they will get an already decommissioned alert. And these are hard to manage, these alerts, because we have the pharmacy who has received the pack who's getting the alert. You as a wholesaler have a verification scan that shows you identified that the pack was decommissioned, but there's also an earlier transaction in another pharmacy where the pack was decommissioned. So there's a lot of investigation of those. I think what we've seen in the last months, as Colin said, great progress on scanner software procedural issues. I think what we see, so it's really important to keep working at that. We just keep those alerts right down, because that saves a lot of work for everyone. One of the things we do sometimes see in wholesalers is one scanner can just go odd, and you can see 300 alerts in an hour. Really important that you pick those up quickly and take them offline and put in another scanner. So just make sure your operatives are aware, mindful to be watching out for if they suddenly start seeing alerts in every scan, that they do something about that rather than continuing to scan. Obviously keep an eye out for software issues, and if you do any hardware or software upgrades, like everything else, you know yourself, when Windows updates on your computer, sometimes Teams doesn't work or antivirus software doesn't work. That can happen with the FMD software, so just be mindful of the fact that if something has changed in the computer, just software issues can happen. And again, at all the scanning points across your warehouses, you need to be looking at this. Obviously, it's important if you have transactions that lead to multiple alerts, for example, duplicate decommissioning. Suppose someone has done a batch twice, that's a lot of alerts. But really, the big thing is, why is that happening? So and again, HPRA would expect to see this as part of your deviation management, that you would have CAPAs in place to prevent recurrence. Colin has already mentioned, give us feedback on alert investigations as quickly as possible. And then one thing we really appreciate your help with, if you become aware of particular exempt medicinal products or particular BSR packs that are causing lots of alerts or very unexpected alerts. So going back to the example I gave earlier, if you have an exempt medicinal product and it's scanning as stolen, or it's scanning as recalled, and it's not recalled, or it's scanning as, say, exported, please do let us know, because if we can find out the breadth, we can do a bit more investigation working with yourself and with the MAH and with the NMPO and the other market. And if we can find out what's going on, the beauty of that is we can actually anticipate future alerts, and we can mark them as closed as they arise, so that there isn't a lot of time dealing with those. And also we can see can actually be taken to prevent future alerts. So it's very helpful if you can be our eyes and ears out there spotting these things early. Is really helpful. Next slide, please. Just make sure you contact us if you need help with anything or any questions. We do have an extended service desk opening hours now, so Monday to Friday 8 to 8, Saturday 9 to 6, and Sunday and public holidays 11 to 6. And we don't get a lot of calls out of hours, and it's something next year we might review whether we need to continue to provide the extended out of hours support. But for the moment, it's there. Obviously, if we need, for example, to contact an MAH about a data issue, as you know yourselves, it might be easier said than done to get a response at 8 o'clock in the evening. So chances are we'll have to wait the following morning to do it clearly for you. But just be aware you can certainly log the calls in. And then we're very open to any feedback on how we can do things better for you. If there's anything we can help you with, please do say it to us. And I suppose, from our perspective, we find the help that wholesalers give us with all of this really valuable. We find your cooperation is really important, really helpful. We find the fact that so many of you scan samples of packs of goods inwards prevents so many alerts down the chain. So I think a big thank you for all the work you do in that area. And again, if we can just tweak the few things that Colin has highlighted that are causing alerts down the chain, that would be really helpful from our perspective. Next slide, please. And then we've just given you there a few contact details. So the alert support and the info emails, they're both monitored by out of our service desk, and the phone number there. We have our Twitter account, LinkedIn, various HPRA and the Commission Q&A on safety features. It's quite useful if you want to have a look at that. So that's basically it on the presentation. What we'll do now is we'll stop the recording.